TFA fam, what is going on? Have some NFL Combine winners and losers, rises and fallers, however you want to chop it up. Just going to go over some initial reactions from the Combine that happened this past weekend. Before we jump into it, we have something very important to talk about. It's not the Calvin Ridley thing. We'll talk about that at another point. Today, I didn't know it, but today is apparently National Cereal Day. So, Kev, I got to know, what is your 101 of cereal?
Cinnamon Toast Crunch, for sure.
All right. I'm a Cap'n Crunch peanut butter.
Oh, see, that would be second.
I will destroy the roof of my mouth for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's definitely number two. That one is delicious as well. But Cinnamon Toast Crunch is always where it's at. And then you get to drink like a kitten, and drink the milk afterwards. The cinnamon milk.
Could you milk me, Fokker?
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that out of the way, drop it in the comments. I want to know what everyone else's favorite cereal their go-to is. Honey Nut Cheerios also. It's like it's kind of like generic, but I feel like that one withstands the test of time. Like there is never a bad bowl of Honey Nut Cheerios.
Yeah, I mean that one's good. There's some ones back in the childhood days of like Lucky Charms was always delicious. Pick out all the marshmallows. Fruit Loops were good. Tricks. Do you remember what were they called, like Golden Smacks or something like that?
I remember. I don't think I ever had them.
Oh, Honeycombs. Honeycombs are really good.
Honeycombs, yeah. Looks like Wesley is with you with a Cinnamon Toast Crunch as well.
Delicious.
It is good. What else was delicious was the Combine. Finally got some numbers on these guys. Some guys did not do so well. Other guys, as we see every year, jumping up out of nowhere and then catching our attention, getting a glimmer in our eyes. But let's just go through this position by position, man. Let's kick it off with quarterback. Start off there at the top. Really don't think there was a lot that happened here. Not too, obviously Malik Willis didn't do any of the testing, so we didn't get to see any of his numbers, which I think was smart on his part. But did anyone stand out to you, good or bad, at quarterback?
No, not really. They kind of are who they are. Like I said, it sort of sounds like Kenny Pickett, notwithstanding his hands, his baby hands, but Sam Howell continues to get a lot of praise. Somebody that sounds like there's a real possibility he's going to go in the first round. But quarterbacks really wasn't where it's at for me. The next two, the running backs, the wide receivers, especially the running backs, I will say is the running backs really surprised me from an athletic standpoint and their testing. I don't think a lot of people had high hopes for a lot of these guys in terms of how they were going to test athletically. One of them I was on, I want to say, very early that was going to be test very well. And I think I hit a home run on that when everyone else said no, that's not going to happen. So I felt good to see that.
Well, let's pump the brakes. We're not there yet. No, you don't have to pat yourself in the back this early on. The one guy that I will mention, Desmond Ritter, tested really well athletically. 4.52 40 puts him in a 97th percentile, 94th percentile burst score as well, according to Player Profiler. Not necessarily a rushing quarterback or a running quarterback per se. Had at least 580 rushing yards in 3 of his 4 years at Cincy. So he's not, like I said, not necessarily a running quarterback, but he's not immobile as well. And with this class kind of being like a big old shoulder shrug, I think, he definitely put himself in a good spot. I still don't know if he gets round 1 consideration in the draft, but I think at the very least he's probably a high round 2 guy. So obviously, depending on, what kind of landing spot he gets, could be someone interesting to watch. But let's go ahead and move things on over to the running back position. I don't want your hand to get sore from patting yourself on the back too much here. So why don't you go ahead and talk about your guy right off the top?
Yeah, Breece Hall just coming out there, just blazing faces out there, running a 4.39, which, if we remember correctly, that I said that before all this that he was going to run a 4.3.
Listen, you said that Breece Hall said
hey,
he was going to run.
That's all I needed to know. That's all I needed to know. But anyways, I mean, he is up there athletically with Saquon Barkley, with Jonathan Taylor. Like those are his comps in terms of where he tested athletically, right? And 4.39 40, 97th percentile, 116.9 speed score, which is 97th percentile, 131 burst score, 94th percentile. And I know a lot of people have said, like, you watch his tape, that some of that doesn't show up, but I felt the same way when I watched Jonathan Taylor, like in college. Like I didn't see some of that either, but the dude is just clearly athletically gifted. He's somebody that I feel like that people weren't as high on. I'm not saying that. I mean, for most people, he was in their top 3, but he wasn't the consensus RB1. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that he just played at Iowa State. And like, not a lot of people care about Iowa State. They're not a team that goes to all these bowl games and that they're all on national television all the time. So for Breece Hall, for most people, he was just kind of a guy, right? Like, and I think a lot of people had him as a top 3 running back in this class, but like, he was my 101 from the start because of everything that he did in college. Athletic, he had a 43.9% or 43.9 college dominator and a 10% target share. So he's the total package. He's still young, only 20 years old, 5'11", 217. So he came in a little bit smaller than what he was posted at Iowa State. But regardless of that, I mean, he just crushed. There's not much else you can really say about him. He is hands down the 101 in this class. Super flex, non-super flex, I don't care. He is the 101.
I think Malik Willis is going to hold that 101 spot for me, but we'll have plenty of time to argue over that in the coming months, especially after the NFL draft. The one guy that I'll jump in here on, Kenny Walker, really helped himself with that 4.38 40. 6 pounds, I think, off of what Breece Hall came in at. I think he came in at 211.
211.
Has that
5'9", 211.
Yeah. So that puts him 75th percentile for BMI, for the BMI Twitter folks out there who care about that sort of thing. I do think it does help a little bit more. I don't get it when people talk about BMI as far as receivers go, but I do think at running back it does hold a little bit of weight. Like I wouldn't use that as a tool and as an evaluation tool to move guys up and down. But whenever you can come in with a 4.38 40, have that good BMI, that obviously helps. And I think we were talking about his pass catching ability, and I would never use a drill at the combine to say for sure, it's like the holy grail of yes or no, whether a guy can or can't do it. But I at least think he looks smooth in those drills. I thought he looked okay as a route runner as well. Again, I'm not going to sit here and try and pound the table for Kenny Walker as a pass catching running back because of the combine, but he at least looked good while he was doing it in those drills. And I think if he ends up getting it would have to be something dramatic, right? But I think I think he could sneak into that RB1 position for me, and I've been saying this, since the beginning. If he got a much higher preferred landing spot and Breece Hall kind of went to like a terrible spot, which again, it would have to be something pretty significant, but I do like Kenneth Walker a ton. And the 4.38 40 is definitely something that excited me whenever he posted that again at 211 as well, because I know going into it, there was some people saying that he was going to be like sub 205, and there was questions about his weight a little bit all over the place. So good weight, good 40 for Kenneth Walker. Anybody else at the running back position you want to touch on?
Oh yeah. I will say I actually think there's now a possibility that Breece Hall goes in the first round. And not that I am advocating it because it should never happen, but I think there's a possibility he could end up going in the first round, late first, something like that. Team jumps up and grabs him. I was about to cough. Sorry. So from there we have Isaiah Spiller. Isaiah Spiller didn't do anything at the combine really. Which is probably smart for him. He's going to wait for the pro day to run and all this other stuff, so we don't really have anything to talk about with him. And then from there, Somebody that I have really come around on, not just over the weekend, but before that, I was starting to grow on me more and more, and that's Rachaad White. He looks like the real deal. He came out and tested very, very well. 4.4, 840, 82nd percentile. About to die over here. 106.3 speed score, 127.1 burst score, which is all in the upper 86th percentile there for that. Now, he is older. He's 23 years old, but he came in 6 foot 214, 18% target share. Absolutely love to see that. And one of his closest comparables is actually David Johnson. And you absolutely love that, which kind of makes sense. Older prospect, same thing with David Johnson when he was coming out. Terrific pass catcher coming out. And so, and I was actually more concerned with him whenever he was 6'2", that what they listed him at was 6'2". Him coming in at 6 foot makes me like him a hell of a lot more as a prospect. He does have some of that upright running style, but he has the ability, the size, the speed to be an absolute 3-down workhorse at the next level. And so I think he's a guy that's probably going to go in the third round or second, probably very well second round, possibly early third round. And then, another guy is Zamir White that I've kind of moved up my rankings a little bit. 6 foot 214. Obviously, we have some concerns with him of the ACL, the knee injuries that he suffered in college at Georgia. But, as far as the production, I really don't care that much about it. Georgia is always a place they're going to split touches with their running backs. We've seen it for years with them and what Kirby Smart does with their running backs. But, I don't know. Maybe he's a little Nick Chubb. I don't know. But he ran a 4.440, which is 96th percentile at his size, a 95th percentile speed score, and a 64th percentile burst score as well for Zamir White. And so I have kind of redone my entire rankings here. Now that I've had more time to spend with these guys, watch these guys, see these guys, see what they've done athletically. And I have right now, I put these guys in tiers, and tier 1 is obviously Breece Hall by himself. Tier 2 is Kenneth Walker, Spiller, and Rachaad White. But then tier 3, I have Brian Robinson, which I didn't talk about, Zamir White, Tyler Algiere, and Tyler Beatty all in that tier 3 running back for me. And Brian Robinson is another guy that really tested pretty well as well. I mean, 4.5 40, which is fine for his size. And, another guy, 32 catches at Alabama, older player as well. But I think for him is that teams are going to like him. He has that Alabama pedigree. NFL teams love that. I think he's going to be a guy that goes late second, early third round, and it's hard to deny that. And so for me, I've tried to kind of put some of these guys where I think they're probably going to go, where we're seeing in mocks and stuff like that with a lot of these guys. We're starting to get a little bit more information about where NFL teams are starting to look at these guys. So I have moved Brian Robinson up. He is in that tier 3 for me. And then Tyler Beatty. Tyler Beatty did exactly what everybody wanted Kyron Williams to be, which is exactly what I said before all of this. Listen, Kyron Williams was a disaster, unmitigated disaster. 4.7. What their agent was doing, letting him run, I have no idea. But where do you view Kyron Williams now?
I'm personally not really moving him down. Like, obviously, this is going to affect his NFL draft stock, and I'm really not going to shift my rankings too much around, but just based on a 5-second clip, basically. Like, at the end of the day, we have to remember that all these guys are human too. You know what I mean? Like, it could have just been an awful day for these guys. Like, who knows? Maybe he could have tested 2 hours earlier and been okay. Like, we just don't know. So I'm not going to, really like what I saw on tape from someone like Kyron Williams, who I thought ran well, ran tough, obviously a really good pass catcher. He played at Notre Dame, so it's not like it was some no-name, D2 school or some kind of thing. Obviously, like I said, this is going to change his NFL draft stock, which will then end up changing my rankings when we see where these guys land. But I'm not going to shove him down the ranks. Obviously, this was not a good showing by any stretch of the imagination. Like, there's literally nothing you can point to with Kyron Williams and say, well, at least he had this. Like, he doesn't have any of that. So I'm personally not moving him down too much. A couple guys I just want – good.
I took him out. Like, he's not even in any of the tiers. I think it's possible he goes undrafted, or he goes 6th, 7th round with this, because like it shows up. Like, we should have known it because something that caught my eye with him was he only had 9 carries of 15 plus yards, which is absolutely dreadful, which kind of shows his lack of that speed or athleticism. So that was there. That was always sitting there, and I always kind of looked at that, and I was like, whatever. But he was never a guy that really ripped anything off. I still think that. So I think his best case scenario is probably like a Theo Riddick type, right? Because he still has that pass catching upside. He's still a terrific pass catcher, so I think that's fine. But I don't think he has any sort of ceiling whatsoever, and especially at his size, being 5'9", 194. He didn't put on any weight. He is super small. There's just no real comp for him outside of like a guy like Theo Riddick or something like that for him. Like the comps for him are just dreadful or disgusting with how bad he tested. I mean, it's bad all across the board. His broad jump was terrible. His vert was terrible. Like it just completely across the board. It wasn't just the 40 time that was bad. And so I think his best case scenario for him is going to have to be just strictly a pass catching running back. I still think that's fine. I mean, a guy like Theo Riddick had some times, especially in fantasy football circles, where he was a relevant option and you could plug him in, as a flex option. But but he is definitely going to be a day 3 pick now for sure.
Yeah. Like I said, it's definitely going to affect his draft stock, but I'm not. I typically don't move around a lot of guys just based on the combine. Like it just, I don't know. Like it kind of makes me go back.
I would agree, and I think that makes sense, and I would echo that. But the size is the problem for me.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's not like Tyler Beatty came in at 5'11", 215 either. He's on the smaller side as well.
Right, but he also tested with a 90th percentile, 40, almost 70th percentile speed score. Like, I mean, he tested about as well as you could absolutely want. Who tit for tat?
Yeah, he had a good
in terms
40.
Of 4.45. I mean, but everything else was there for him as well. I mean, 916 yards after contact, was 8th, 57 missed tackles. I mean, 22 carries, 15 plus yards, 7th in this class. I mean, yes, he is on the smaller side, 5'8", 197, but he hit all those marks, at least baseline, what you're looking for in terms of athletically, for him to be able to be more than that.
Someone else who popped off athletically that I didn't see anyone really talking about other than our own Robbie Jeffries, and that was South Dakota State running back Pierre Strong. Another, you were talking about the athleticism in this class. Ran a 4.37, a 5.11, 207. Performed well in the jumps too. I think he was top 6 in both vert and broad jump among the running backs. I haven't gotten any eyes on him yet to really know all that much about him, but obviously after a performance like this is what I kind of use the combine for. Like guys who I thought were athletic that didn't test well athletically, kind of go back and check on them again, and then guys like this who pop up for me to get my eyes on. But a 7.0 yard per carry average for Pierre Strong. Like, even if you want to knock him a little bit for the, his level of competition at South Dakota State, which is obviously fair, 7 yards per carry career average is pretty crazy for any level of competition. He does have 20 plus catches in back-to-back seasons as well. He's on the older side. He did turn 23 in December. So, not someone who you're going to be looking at for dynasty purposes. That's, going to anchor your running back group for, the next several years. But we only care about the first contract with running backs anyway. So it's not a huge deterrent here, but definitely going to be interested to see where he lands, both his draft capital and the landing spot for him. And then Jerome Ford, I thought, did really well as well at the running back position coming in. Came in a little bit heavier than what he was at the Senior Bowl. Came in at 210, ran a 4.46 40, which after I found out that he ran that 10.5 second 100 meter, that definitely makes sense. But he's someone who I thought did well. He's my RB4 right now, but he was my RB5 previously. So really like seeing that from Jerome Ford. And then just some other guys I just want to get some eyes on. Ty Chandler, UNC, who was at Tennessee for a while, never really got anything going. Did have, I think, almost 1,100 rushing yards this last season. And then Tyler Goodson, kind of similar to Beatty, kind of the same height, same weight. 4.42 for his 40 to Tyler Beatty's 4.45, but then did a little bit better with the jumps compared to Beatty. So just some other guys that I want to get some eyes on. But Kev, real quick before we switch over to wide receiver, because obviously we have a lot we want to talk about there. Tyler Algiere coming out with the 4.6. Did you move him around a bunch? Drop it, I think you said he's in tier 3 for you now. I think you were expecting him to do better athletically with the testing, but Tyler Algiere for you, and I appreciate everyone popping up in the comments. Good to see Walito, Uzi, and Joe rocking with us. But just a little Tyler Algiere talk, and then we'll switch over to wide receiver.
I didn't really move him down at all. I moved him down one spot just because I kind of moved some things around a little bit. But he is still kind of the same area. I still have him as RB6. I'm not all that concerned with him because of his size. Being a 200 plus running back, 220 pound plus running back, that he didn't blaze like that. Like, I think he could still be something like a David Montgomery type running back. Where, depending on what the team's looking for, it's really going to depend on draft capital for him. But I still think all the other things that you like about him, his physicality as a runner, loves to take on contact, great contact balance for him. All those things still matter for Tyler Algiere. So I didn't really move him there because basically for me, it's Breece Hall, Walker, Spiller, White, Brian Robinson at 5, and then Algiere at 6, Zamir White at 7, Beatty at 8, Jerome Ford at 9. And then the other guy that I did want to hit on really quickly because I think he's somebody that a lot of people are going to be talking about, and that's James Cook, who also did really well at the combine. Ran pretty much, I think, he's not somebody that I think anybody should be moving up or down. He kind of did what we expected him to do. He did come in a little bit heavier than what we were thinking. So 5'11", 199. If people aren't familiar, that is Dalvin Cook's brother. And so, but he 4'4", 240, 95th percentile, 77th percentile speed score, and a 47th percentile burst score. And so did well there. Obviously, same thing we've kind of talked about was Zamir White and James Cook kind of split that backfield, 113 carries, 728 yards for him. But, he's somebody a lot of people like as well. Could end up being a, more of a 3. I don't know if he will turn into a 3-down back or not either. We'll see on that. But James Cook is a guy that I think really helped himself out as well. It could be a late day 2, probably day 3 pick, probably much more early day 3 pick, something like that for James Cook. So he's somebody that I think that a lot of people like as well. A lot of these running backs for people are all over the place. Because my tier 4 is Jerome Ford, Pierre Strong, Damian Pierce, and James Cook. And so all those guys are kind of in that same bucket for me. Pierre Strong, though, looks like he might be the next Elijah Mitchell. I don't know. It's easy to say that. It's easy comp to say with better draft capital because if you remember, Elijah Mitchell was an athletic specimen as well. Ran a 4.340 as well. And, he crushed. 240 carries last year, 1,600, almost 1,700 rushing yards, 18 total touchdowns, 150 receiving yards for him. 7th in yards after contact, 3.39 yards after contact per attempt, which is great. 30 carries at 15-plus yards, which is first among all running backs as well. So Pierre Strong is definitely a name that maybe he doesn't get like great draft capital, but he's somebody that I would definitely, depending on where he lands, somebody that I would be looking to roster, even in just seasonal leagues. I would, and redraft. I would keep an eye on, and just somebody to keep at the back of your mind. If something happens to starter, this guy is going to be the guy you're going to want.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited to dive into his film and see kind of what kind of player he is. But let's go ahead and move over on to wide receiver. Obviously, another just blazing fast class here. This is a lot of. It seemed like every time like a 40 came in, you're like, oh damn, that's going to be the fastest one. And then it just seemed like we just kept popping off with all these 4.3s and low 4.4s, but. Obviously, the guy that I'm going to kick it off here with is Christian Watson. I thought he was going to test well. I did not see him testing this well, coming in with a 4.3, 640 at 208 pounds. He doesn't have, crazy raw statistical stats, but 90th percentile college dominator rating, 89th percentile yards per reception. Has a little bit of the later breakout age. I think it was like 20.6 for his breakout age, but after a strong Senior Bowl and then this combine, he's locked himself in as a day 2 pick for sure. Kev, who do you have here at wide receiver?
Well, I mean, so you have Treylon Burks, who didn't run, I think, is what people thought he was going to, but he still
Didn't jump.
fantastic for a guy. That's 225. I mean, 4.5 is still great for a player of his size. I'm not moving him. He's still my wide receiver one for sure. But I think between him and because right now, again, I kind of put these guys into tiers as we kind of got along, and right now it's Treylon Burks, London, Jameson Williams, and Garrett Wilson all in tier one. I don't think there's a clear-cut guy here in this group. I think there's going to be a lot of debate over the coming months about these these top wide receivers. And so really, I mean, I think Garrett Wilson did kind of what we thought he was going to do. I will say it was a little off-putting because at some points of this, there was because the times early on were way better, and then all of a sudden they corrected all of them, and the confirmed times were not nearly as good as what we were hoping. But still, there's a lot to look forward to here with this class. I think Garrett Wilson tested really well with his 4.38. Drake London didn't do anything because he's still nursing his way back from that ankle injury, so didn't really hurt himself there. But George Pickens is somebody that I wanted to hit on with what he was able to do. Still kind of a raw prospect. Didn't do anything last year really because he was coming off the ACL tear that he basically a year removed from at this point. It happened last March. But, him coming in, running the 4.47, good solid speed score with 71st percentile there with that. So like to see that with George Pickens. So he's somebody that I still feel really great about having in my top 5. Love him. And then I want to hit on David Bell because my initial reaction with him has I don't want to say changed, but I've kind of, as I've stepped away from the combine and kind of moved my way from it and kind of got to think about things a little more rationally, that it really doesn't fucking matter what his 40 time was, that it was 4.6, because there are so many wide receivers that aren't great athletes. Like it doesn't matter as much for wide receivers, I think, that it does for running backs in terms of athleticism. Because there's so many different ways that wide receivers can win. And so the fact that he run a 4.6, doesn't really concern me. It's terrible. Don't get me wrong. 30th percentile speed score is awful. 20th percentile burst score, not good. But I still think that we've seen enough wide receivers. My issue with David Bell continues to be a lot of the negative stuff we're hearing people say or how the NFL views him and that the NFL doesn't love him. And that's going to be the big deterrent for me with him. Is because, I mean, his best comp is actually Davante Adams. Not that I think that he's going to be Davante Adams, but Davante Adams, another guy, not athletic. Like he's not somebody that went out there and blazed, 4.40 and all this stuff. And so we can get a little bit overzealous with some of these numbers and think that's what these guys have to do to be good NFL wide receivers. It's just not the case. Davante Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, the list goes on and on of guys that weren't, ultra athletes that were able to be, ballers at the next level. So with that being said, I still have David Bell, I think, at tier 4.
You're just not killing him the way you initially were.
No, I take that back. I am in tier 3.
Welcome. It is nice to have you. I thought I was going to be the lone guy out here still willing to wait on David Bell when everyone else was already, out there picking out his casket, looking at his nice headstone, figuring out what to put on the engraving, practicing their eulogies. It's nice that someone's still here with me, at his bedside, at least holding his hand and not letting him go alone. The other guy that I wanted to touch on quickly, and he's also someone who I have not watched yet. That is Kevin Austin out of Notre Dame. Really, really strong combine performance from him. Came in at 6'2", 200 pounds, ran a 4.43. That gives him an 84th percentile speed score, had a 92nd percentile burst score, and then an 88th percentile agility score as well. His production profile is a bit lacking, you might say, going into this year. So his first 2 years at Notre Dame had a total of 6 catches, I think, for barely over 100 yards. And I think this year was 40-something catches for 800 or so yards. So not a massive production profile by any means, especially compared to some of these guys. But that combine performance definitely is making me want to get some eyes on him. I know Skye Moore. I think his weigh-ins and his measurements were pretty important to me coming in. I kind of had questions as to, I didn't think it was going to be as dramatic as Rondale Moore, but I definitely, just watching some of his film, he definitely did not seem like a 5'10", 190-pound receiver to me. And that's where he came in at 5'9.5", 195 pounds, 4'4", 140. Now, his agility drills were pretty dookie, especially for a smaller receiver like that. But I think he shows enough on film that that's not necessarily a huge sticking point. Like I said, I don't overweigh a lot of this stuff. I kind of let the NFL draft and landing spots really determine how I look at these guys. But he's another guy who obviously did well for himself. And I think Jalen Tolbert coming in, not a fantastic day by any means, especially compared to some of these other guys, but came in at 194, had a sub 540, came in at 449, and then had an okay 3 cone right above that 7-second mark, which is kind of the baseline of where you want to see them. And someone else who, had that a little bit of that Senior Bowl buzz, and then at least didn't hurt himself with the combine. So I'm very curious to see where he goes. But Kev, what are you doing with a guy like Calvin Austin, who came out and just absolutely dismantled the combine, but is 5'7", 170 pounds? What are you doing with somebody like that?
I mean, I think it depends on draft capital and where he goes, depending on opportunity. The NFL is changing. Obviously, we're seeing more and more of these guys like this being able to get more opportunities, use them in a variety of different ways. But yeah, I mean, I think that's really what matters with him. I think so. Two things that I do want to hit on. I thought you were going to hit on, but I don't think you did. Is Christian Watson, who
literally the first person I talked about.
Oh, see, I don't know. I was in a different world.
Thanks for paying. Welcome to the show.
Well, then I want to say this, Skye Moore, because I absolutely love Skye Moore, and I think there's a real strong possibility he could find himself in the first round. If not, it's going to be early day two, like top 40 pick, day two. The dude's an absolute stud, and I think he's very much in the Elijah Moore mold for me from last year. And I think watching him, he really reminds you of watching DJ Moore, which I think is a really good comp for him. And terrific in terms of just his advanced metrics were fantastic. Came in, tested pretty well athletically. And so I just absolutely love Skye Moore. He's absolute baller with yards after the catch, which is exactly what DJ Moore is. Is really great at as well. So I love Skye Moore, and I think people weren't nearly as high on him as they should have been. And he definitely did himself a really big service coming out and crushing the combine as well. Christian Watson is tough because he doesn't have the production, right? 43 catches, 801 yards, 7 touchdowns at a small school. However, he did have over 500 return yards over the last 2 years, which is really good for him. But that's the only thing that concerns me, because even his advanced stuff, I mean, he is first in yards per route run, 4.33, which is higher than anybody in this class. Excellent there. But he's terrible at yards after the catch. Only 346 yards after the catch, 8.0 yards after the catch per reception, which is 40th, which isn't bad. Some of that could be due to the fact that he only had 43 receptions, but a 13.6 average depth of target, which isn't that big of a deal. 8 receptions for 20 yards, 395 deep yards, and 4 touchdowns, which is insane considering 395 yards off 8 receptions. So, the athleticism is definitely there, but we'll have to see where he goes and what his draft capital is.
Yeah, I definitely think he cemented himself into day two for sure. I think he's going to be. I think there's a really good chance he ends up going in the second round. Like I said, just with the drum beat from the Senior Bowl, he balled out there, and then going out and just absolutely dominating the combine as well. Obviously, not a lot of tight ends that we are super, excited about coming into the 2022 NFL draft. But anybody stand out to you, good or bad, from the tight ends?
I mean, I think Trey McBride was smart by not doing the athleticism stuff. That was fine with him. Like I said, he's going to be a day two pick for sure. Probably an early second round pick, something like that. He's definitely, I think, the top tight end in this class. Didn't need to run, so I was totally fine with that. But not really anything that really stood out. This is not a great tight end class. I think the bread and the butter is going to come from mainly, I mean, especially the wide receivers, at least for fantasy purposes, the wide receivers. And then definitely now the running backs with some of the stuff that these guys were able to do. I think this is actually a much better class than what we thought it was going to be, especially initially, right? Whenever you first kind of initially start looking at this, I think it's really started to, get better and better as time's gone on. Because, I mean, we didn't even talk about a guy like, some of the other guys like John Mechie or Alec Pierce, which, he's somebody that tested really well as well, from Cincinnati. Though I'm concerned with he's basically kind of like DJ Chark, because that's kind of what his production looks like. 17.1 average depth of target, which is excellent, but everything else he did, I mean, 189 yards after the catch, which is dreadful, absolutely dreadful, just not good after the catch. But 52 receptions, 884 yards and 8 touchdowns in Cincinnati, but he did test really well. And so that's kind of where this is a pretty deep class in terms of the wide receivers. I don't even think we even talked about Chris Olave. Surprise. We just completely went right over Chris Olave. But
it's because we kind of knew that we were too low on him, and then we obviously
corrected that. I have corrected that. I have moved him up. He is now in tier 2 for me, with Pickens, Jahan Dotson, and Chris Olave is in that tier.
Yeah.
And it's mainly because he's going to be a first-round pick. And so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day what the hell I think about Chris Olave. If the NFL views him as a first-round pick, that's all that matters. And so, you could say, you're not as big a fan, you're not as high on him, that's fine, but the NFL is definitely going to be, he's going to be a first-round guy. And so that's kind of how I view him. And so, but I also love Jahan Dotson. I don't think we talked about him either, but Jahan Dotson, I think he did fine, athletically, came in, his size is fine, where he came in as well with Jahan Dotson. What was it, 5'11", 178, which is kind of right in line what we thought he was going to be. He didn't run the 4.3 we were all hoping for, but he still ran a 4.43, which is fine for him. And I think he could end up being a guy, we look back on this class, that people weren't high enough on. I think he could actually be really, really special. So, from Penn State, you're
goddamn right. Yeah, excited to see where what kind of draft stock he ends up getting and the landing spot that he gets. I think if he can get somewhere where he can kind of just be, quote unquote, just the slot guy, with a dominant or at least a above average wide receiver one on the team. I think he can do. Think he can do really well for himself. Glad to see Joe also in here having our back with some Olave. Not necessarily slander for us, but for a lot of people.
It's just. Like I've said with him, like, it's just not. There's nothing that really stood out to me that I was like, okay, like it just was nothing. Like every time, and people will rave about him, and I'm like, I know he's an excellent route runner, which isn't really as big of a deal as people think that it is at the NFL level. Like, it's just really not as big of a deal. Everyone thinks that it's super important. I mean, getting separation is obviously the biggest thing that a wide receiver can do at the next level. But I don't know. Like, I just wasn't really blown away with him, and a lot of people love him. Maybe we need to have Robbie on to because he's a big Chris Olave guy. Just see somebody else. Yeah, just so we can see from him. So what he loves so much about Chris Olave, because I don't know. I don't see it. The NFL sees it, so that's all that really matters. Because his advanced stuff were terrible. Yards after the catch was terrible. 2.29 yards per out run, which is 83rd. Terrible. 4.1 yards after the catch per reception, 404th, which is terrible. So I don't know. That's Chris Olave for you. So I do want to ask this before we get out of here: who is your biggest winner from the overall, like top 3? Who's your biggest winners?
I think you got to put Christian Watson in that conversation, just because of, like I said, the buzz of the Senior Bowl, then coming out. A lot of these guys that were running the sub 4.4s were smaller. He had a faster 40 than both of the Ohio State receivers at 20, 25 pounds heavier than what they came in. So I think you gotta give him a nod. Not necessarily he was a big riser or anything, but I think Kenneth Walker with the 40 that he ran, along with Isaiah Spiller not testing, I think he did the measurements and that was it. I think he kind of put himself up in that, at least the RB2 discussion for a lot of people. I don't know if I would have a about you.
I don't know if it's really fair to say, but I'm still going to say Breece Hall. I don't really care. I think just taking himself to a whole other level with what he was able to do this weekend. Skye Moore, Christian Watson for sure. I think Rachaad White really was a big winner from this past weekend as well. So yeah, but all these stats mean nothing when you line up. They absolutely do matter, actually, Josh. That's not accurate. A lot of these wide receivers, like for example, yards per out run, is a terrific metric to look at in terms of predicting wide receiver success at the next level, which is one of the main stats that I ever look at in terms of when it comes to a wide receiver. It's been proven over time that it's one of the most predictive stats for future success for a wide receiver. But I do agree that in terms of like your 40 times, all that stuff, yeah, you're right. It's not nearly as important. They're running in a straight line. How often does that ever happen in the NFL? Not often. You're going to get, yeah. And so all those things don't really matter. So I would definitely agree on that. That which I think we've kind of talked about, that some of it is not as big of a deal. It's kind of fun to look at and stuff like that. But I do want to see how good a burst they have, which does show up with some of this stuff. If you're terrible at yards after the catch, that's not good, especially at the NFL level. We want guys that are yak monsters, stuff like that. So I don't know. But I do agree. I think at some point, some of the stuff gets a little bit overexcited about it.
Yeah, I think just this last point that Josh made, there was something that came out about the Rams being particularly happy whenever Cooper Kupp, I think, ran a poor 40-yard dash, but because of like the tracking they have like in the shoulder pads, I think he was like the fastest player at the Senior Bowl or something. So that allowed a lot of teams to pass on him and allowed the Rams to take him in the second round, I think, whenever they drafted him. So there's definitely something to the game speed versus just lining up. Like what they do at the combine literally will never happen in a game.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I don't, when it comes to that, absolutely no. I mean, the 40 at the end of the day doesn't really matter all that much. Because Joe said the 10-yard split matters. Yes, because you want to see their burst off the line and stuff like that. But in terms of just their straight 40-yard dash, it doesn't really matter. That's what we talk about, like with wide receivers. Like it's really not that big of a deal. There's so many wide receivers, elite wide receivers that run 4.6, and stuff like 4.7 and stuff like that. So it's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and if these guys if their mental processing speed isn't as fast as their 40, it doesn't matter. Like if they can't kind of see what is coming, so to speak, then all the speed in the world is not going to help them. Like we see a lot of these combine stars not pan out whatsoever in the NFL. So
Yeah, I mean, even just John Ross. I mean, he was a top 10 pick, and blazed the 40, and other guys like Ted Ginn who were essentially kind of the same thing, just great 40 time. And Ted Ginn had a little bit more success than what John Ross did in his career, but stuff like that.
We could have another half-hour long discussion here, just rattling off some combine people that ended up not working out. Dree Archer and Josh Doxson, and it looks like maybe Denzel Mims already. Poor one out, but that is going to do it, guys. Appreciate you rocking with us. Appreciate the everyone in the comments keeping things going tonight. Make sure you keep it locked in. Are we going live tomorrow, Kev? Is that a live show?
Sure. Yeah, we can.
We might be live again tomorrow. If not, you'll see that coming on your YouTube and podcast feeds. We're going to be going over free agency preview because that is coming up next week. So definitely
be going live next for sure. We'll definitely go on live next week. Probably. What is free agency? What is the actual opening of free agency? Is it Monday?
I think it's next Monday, right?
Yeah. So either Monday or Tuesday, we'll definitely be going live just because we'll have so much information that'll come out that, with all the signings and everything else. So we'll go live. We'll just kind of, I'll probably get a bunch of people to come on, some of the boys, and we'll just, chop it up, talk about where all these guys land and break up the monotony of the rookie season talk.
Speaking of the rookie season talk, we'll definitely have some more rookie profiles coming out as well as we lead up to the NFL draft. So keep it locked in here. Please hit us with that sub and that like. Follow us over on Twitter and TikTok and Instagram as well. You can catch a lot of our stuff over there. So until next time, we'll talk to all of you soon. Have a fantastic evening.